Yeah.
Hey, Will, can you take us kind of in the mind of a special teams guy? Because in preseason, obviously, after the first half of a game, as a fan perspective, people start leaving the stadium. You're like, whatever, we got a few more games. But for special team guys and punt formation specifically, I get super fired up about them because as someone who's undrafted, it's like they're fighting for their families on these like 1 or 2 reps they get. Can you just like take us to the mindset where you're like, I need this rep, I need this tackle to make like a 53-man roster?
Take us on a journey, Willie.
Take us on a journey? So you're basically saying like it's like unpopular to watch the special team. You're just saying like what is the mindset of these guys who are fringe guys?
Yeah, I had this moment where I was like, this means so much to these guys, these 1 reps, and it kind of fired me up where I'm looking at punt formations and I'm like, this means a lot. More than a lot of these other guys that got their shoulder pads off on the sideline. It's like the nerves are probably going crazy, and then half the stadium's empty. But for you, it's like this is the final interview, or could be. So where's your mind at?
So when I was on practice squad the first year, I would say my knock is I wasn't very good on special teams because I didn't really do it in college. But I feel like when you're on those units, and you can say you're a depth player. I could play linebacker. I could back up either spot. I could do all those things. So you'll be thrusted into roles of like, hey, can you fill, whether it's right guard, whether we have a need at left tackle, right wing, where you can play on the punt team. The punt team is the most important unit for guys who are on the fringe because ultimately that's the biggest trust one. Kickoff, you can run down and hit where you're not running anymore. So honestly, you're going to see those guys who are gunners on punt team. Those guys can still make their money being gunners on punt team. But now that kickoff is out of it, you'll have more of those depth guys who played, back up, whether it's tight end, running back, receiver, linebacker, safety. And those reps on punt team are the most important reps that you will have because ultimately you're not being looked at as the guy who's going to be out there starting on the field. Whereas, okay, he's a good depth guy, but can he play special teams? And more specifically, like where can you play him on punt? The more you can do on punt team, guard, tackle, wing, the better your chances are because if you can't play on special teams, it doesn't matter how good of a backup you are. You won't be on you won't be on the game day roster until you can get up to speed on playing those. So those truly are the most important reps and they get graded insanely detailed with the special teams coordinator and those guys who are like trying to make that roster. It is legitimately, can you play multiple spots on the punt team? That is your best shot at making the team if you're a fringe guy. If you're a gunner, if you can beat double teams, you can play for a long time. You look at what was his name? Slater made a career out of that. Ebner, he was a big special teams guy. Who knows how competent they were as backups, but the fact that they get to play special teams at a very high level allowed them to have a career at that. If you're somebody who's more of a depth guy who plays more on the field, you have to have some level of competence like playing special teams or you won't play. It is legitimately, you go out there and all you think to yourself is, I need to have 1 tackle this game.
And if you sit there as a fan and you want to watch real football in a preseason, you got to wait to that second half because that's when bullets are truly flying. It is so intense and every rep does mean everything to those guys. And it sucks when you see dudes that you can see kill it. They have like 10 tackles or whatever and they just, for whatever reason, the numbers don't make sense. They get the call at the end of those cuts because it's a wild time. Preseason's so different for so many different people just going into it.
The urgency, like the weird what is it, like just fight or flight just that is happening in your brain chemically, like going out on the field trying to like make the most of your, whether it's special teams reps, like if you're slow to get off a block, you're just cussing yourself out in your head like, fuck, coach is gonna hate this,
right? This might be the end of me.
This might be the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's so small. The margin for error is so small.
Right. Because preseason, like ultimately you're trying to look for your starter. You're trying to see your starters have some operation out there, like feel good going into the first week. Fans, they're excited to see the guys who are going to start. Who do they get to watch? Is the starting quarterback going to get some snaps and see who's going to round out certain depth? But the second half stuff, nobody necessarily cares about, but there's so much happening in that second half.
All of the articles that are coming out about the rookies and the starters and how good everybody looks, it's all fluff right now. Everything's just fluff because it's like these guys are getting like 15 snaps. It's like, wet your beak a little bit, get out there, get loose, feel the fans, feel the operation, all that stuff. But the real stuff is the things people aren't writing about, which is that second half. Mm-hmm. There might be a couple of things like, hey, this guy looks good, that guy, but you really don't know. Like, That's where the stuff really matters right now in the preseason.
And the guys who are like in the 90, like probably 70 to 90 range trying to make the roster, the 53, like if they have a good like second half on the field, you'll notice them more on like the first team unit reps with special teams. You'll see that like coaches are trying to give them the shot to see if they can, basically play special teams because they know they got somebody, whether, again, in my situation, hey, we have somebody who can play linebacker, but can he play special teams? Mm-hmm. All 4 units too.
Yeah. Young guys, man. If you think you're just a defensive specialist, get in those special team reps and practice.
Even offensive guys, man.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're a backup receiver or running back, like you got to play special teams. You might be great out of the backfield. You might be a good third down back, but you might not be the starter. You have to play special teams.
Every roster spot matters. Even for the offensive line. Like if you're an interior guy and you can't play center and both guards, it's like, it's not how this league works anymore. Mm-hmm. You don't have a year to develop those types of things. It's so cutthroat.
Yeah, for linemen too. Like if you can't be a swing guy, if you're a true depth player,
yeah,
if you're like second team, maybe you got to be able to play like multiple positions.
Right. It is funny how different it is because you got guys that are just chilling on the sidelines. You get done with however many reps you have, and then seeds in the mouth, unbuckle the shoulder pads, and you're just watching a football game. You have the best seats in the house.
And
other guys,
it's always interesting too because you've alluded to it, being at an elite level of a left tackle. The quote, the more you can do, doesn't necessarily.
The more you do, the less you get paid.
Yeah, the more you do, the less you get paid. Whereas like me coming up, I'm thinking I gotta figure out how I can play every different thing on punt team because that is how ultimately I would get paid.
Right. And there was never. I could literally play. I've said this a bunch of times in this podcast. I could play one position, and that was it. I was not good at anything else. Put me at the right side, put me at guard, anything. It was terrible. My rookie year with my Michael Ruse and Michael Orr, they got Michael Orr in free agency to play the right tackle. So when I came in, it was swing and I was playing guard in my rookie camp. And it was just the only time I even showed any glimmer of hope at all was at left tackle. I was praying to the gods that nobody else went down except for Michael Ruse. If somebody was to go down, please make it Michael Ruse. Right. And luckily, shout out you, Michael Ruse. You did go down week 5.
Dude,
appreciate you, dog.
I hated special teams. I know ultimately that's how I got to play. I just overall, you wanted to be out there and just playing linebacker. Because when you're just not the fastest guy, the boys I got shorter arms, so it was always a little bit more difficult. I love playing like guard on punt because you're protected a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I remember when Adam Hayward came in my second year, he's like, hey, it doesn't matter how well you can play linebacker. If you're not like the guy or the starter, like I'm going to have to teach you how to play special teams. And shout out the boy Adam Hayward because he was always keeping me after practice and doing things to where ultimately I think he was trying to help show the special teams coordinator that I'm willing to do all these different things underneath him because he was the captain. But yeah, if it wasn't for like Adam and some of those guys, because you just hated going out there on 4th down.
Yeah.
You want to hit your 3. Like when I was getting to play, I would still have to be on like punt team or kickoff return. Yeah. They would save my legs by not putting me on kickoff.
Yeah, but punt team's tough because you got maximum effort and then you're starting 1st down.
Yeah, bro. And then you hope it's like a televised game, so there's like a TV timeout.
Yeah. God. Yeah.
Or if you know they're about to go down and get tackled, you start to slow up a little bit.
That level of stress has got to be so crazy.
Yeah, more when I was playing, it was more of like, oh God, this kind of sucks. I have to go out here on 4th down.
Because when you get into the season, part of me be like, damn, these special teams guys kind of got it made. Because I'm playing every single snap on offense.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things can go wrong, but not even really thinking about how their life is hell. At any moment they can get cut for a new guy coming in.
Yeah.
One team cuts this guy and like, well, this guy's probably a little bit better. So they switch him out. It's just got to be so hard.
Dude, man. I saw one cat, man, I forget his name. He was a linebacker. We had a Thursday night game. And so it was later in the year too. So we didn't really practice like with pads on. It was walkthrough all week long.
Yeah.
And it was his first game. He got called up from practice squad. He was a solid little linebacker, but he was the wing. He was the left wing on punt. And he got beat with an up and under against the Giants, and they cut him the next day.
No shit.
Yeah. And you felt for him because you felt like he didn't get like a true fair shake because his position wasn't wing on the punt team. It was more of like guard or tackle. And he was a practice squad guy, but he got called up to play wing. And the only job of a wing is like, don't get beat on an up and under to get it blocked.
Right.
He got it blocked and they sent him fucking
Gotta have tempo in that pass set, brother. Gotta have tempo. Tough living.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough for the
little
boys.
PTSD for you there, huh?
Yeah. You just hated to see it. Yeah, like because I think I was in my third year, and I was like, I remember trying to talk to the special teams coordinator that it was just like, hey, I know we ended up winning that game, and you kind of like tried to save him essentially, like, hey, like we didn't practice all week, and he never got a live look at the up and under, and ultimately the guy who hit him on the up and under was obviously notorious for the up and unders, but he was somebody who was very capable at all times of like blocking a punt. So he's going up against somebody really good. And so you just felt like he didn't get he was done after that. You know what I mean?
Did he
like
ever show back up?
No, I don't think he made it on another team or another roster. Because once you ultimately put that out there, you get beat on up and under, you get cut the next day, like nobody's jumping at it. It's like, okay, he must have done more than just allow an up and under.
Yeah.
And those guys who like, again, to Jack's point, in preseason, you're going through all these mental gymnastics of trying to make the team. You're on practice squad. You're doing everything possible to try to stick around. And you get thrown out there Thursday night football, get beat on up and under, and your career's pretty much done. It sucks.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
And it's different layers too. Like there's guys, so many guys want to be in the league right now, but like even going to Boost and seeing there's a couple of guys that are camp started, preseason games are going, and there's a couple of guys just waiting on a call. Getting a workout, just hoping to God something happens where they can get a call. It's just, it's a tough life to live.
Yeah.
Just to keep a dream alive.
Right. Because ultimately you don't know if the door is going to open back up for you. Especially when you're young, you're not willing to fully shut the door because ultimately your identity and being is wrapped up.
Well, you're like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
What's next for me? It's scary. It's
Yeah.
a scary transition for sure.